Okay, hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are with the City of Kingston Licensing Department, and they're going to give us a lot of information about licensing and special events for your business in the City of Kingston, answer some questions that you might have, and we're really looking forward to all of that today. So we are, well, I'm not currently present in, but from Harbour Community Kitchen. And Harbour Community Kitchen is a project of Keys Employment and Newcomer Services. And our goal is to help support people to build and grow food-based businesses. So we do that through low-cost access to an approved commercial kitchen, and also through the provision of supports and connecting people to the correct resources in the community to help them meet their own individual needs. So today we are joined by Heather Woodland. Heather is the Supervisor of Licensing and Policy for the City of Kingston. We have Jessica Dillon. Jessica is the Licensing and Enforcement Agent with the City of Kingston, and Kevin Pickell, who is a Licensing and Enforcement Agent also with the City of Kingston. So we're just going to let these folks share their expertise with us today, and then we'll have some questions, Q&A at the end. And yeah, we're really looking forward. We're really looking forward to it. So can I just ask everyone, if you're not speaking, to please mute yourself? And yeah, let's go. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Carissa, and thanks for having us here. It's such a pleasure. Big fan of this program. And Chris and I have been working together a little while to kind of iron out some of the details of this program. Just before we get started, I wanted to mention that this program is very unique. The arrangement we have with Keys Harbour Kitchen is it's one of a kind, and it's the first of its kind. So as we kind of work out some of these little pieces inside of this agreement and the nature of this agreement, just be patient with us. We're getting there, and hopefully we find a path forward that works for everyone. But it's been a work in progress and such a project of the heart. So it's been great. But without further ado, we'll just get right into licensing. And I won't be too much of a talking head today. I'm going to introduce us, and I'm going to pass it to the subject matter experts who are my colleagues you see today. So let's get into it. So today's presentation, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about who we are as a team and a little bit about what we do, which includes business licensing. And of course, this presentation is very tailor-made to food-based businesses for obvious reasons. We're going to go over the licensing application process, regulations, both inside the municipality and outside of the municipality for your consideration. What it looks like to issue the license and pay for the license and go through that process when folks are doing that. And then we'll of course go over any questions that you might have or that we didn't cover in today's presentation. So as Carissa mentioned, who we are, we have me, Heather, Jessica, and Kevin. This is a small portion of our team. We do have other folks who are available to answer your questions when you contact us, but Jessica and Kevin are here today. And so business licensing and specifically food premise licensing is only a small portion of what we do. I just wanted to highlight that we're a busy team and we do many things in our licensing team, and that includes business and trades licensing, lottery licensing. So that's the bingo, raffle, Nevada permits. We have all types of different permits within the City of Kingston, including pet registrations, your dogs and cats. We do short-term rental licensing, and we do a lesser known little duty called livestock claims. So that's just sort of a little bit of an idea of what we do in our team. And then without further ado, Kevin, if you want to take it away.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so business, when we look at business and trades licensing, we have the authority under the Municipal Act to regulate certain types of businesses for the purpose of health and safety, nuisance protection, nuisance control, and consumer protection. We work with clients that are opening up new businesses, existing businesses, and provide that pathway for their success. We map that out through the application process and assist with coordinating the appropriate inspections depending on the type of business classification. And we want to ensure that this is like an exercise that is welcoming and supportive, as new entrepreneurs are excited about opening something new in the City of Kingston. So we'll look at types of food-based businesses. We have a food service premise, which we'll go over, in terms of the definition. So that can include anything from a restaurant to a cafe to a bakery, as well as catering and grocery stores. Some convenience stores offer food products to the public. We also have home-based businesses that also offer food that we'll touch on as well. When we look at our mobile refreshment vehicle licensing, basically we're looking at either a mobile kitchen, essentially that's on wheels, so like a food truck, or even a non-motorized cart or trailer, for example, as well. And then lastly, we touch on some items with respect to special events when someone would like to bring their products to various events. So for food service premise, we have a couple definitions here. So from our municipal licensing bylaw, we have the following. Just going to read this out loud here. Every food premise other than a refreshment vehicle where meals and meal portions or baked goods are prepared for immediate consumption. They can or sold or served in a form that will permit consumption on the premise or elsewhere. So you can have, so we take out the mobile refreshment vehicle licensing. We're focusing on basically a bricks and mortar location. So it could be, either a commercial property and or a home occupation, for example. And that falls under that categorization when you're looking at food products. And then under the Health Protection and Promotion Act, the following definition underneath that is a premise where food or milk.
Kevin, you somehow got muted.
Can you hear me okay?
I didn't touch anything, sorry.
Sorry, everybody, that was my fault.
Can you hear me okay, guys?
You're perfect.
Okay. I'm not too sure if you caught the last part of that, but I was going over the definition of the Health Protection and Promotion Act, which our bylaw draws reference to as well, in unison with our folks over at Public Health. So that's the last piece in reference to a premise where food or milk is manufactured, processed, stored, handled, displayed, distributed, and transported. And so basically that's almost like a catch-all for different types of foods being prepared for public consumption. Next slide, please. So we look at home occupations. I think there's sometimes a thought where maybe I can't necessarily have a business that's operating from my home. And you can, there's certain provisions with that, of course. So when we look at home ocs, we look at, is the area in question zoned for that type of use? Am I able to maybe start a home occupation if I don't own the property? The answer is yes, you can with permission from the property owner. So there's a few different pieces that fall into home occupations and a few requirements sometimes, either from public health and or from the building department that may be identified, such as, perhaps the installation of a sink or dishwasher, but not necessarily always the case. So we look at home occupations with a similar lens. It's a food premise, but it's, in a residentially zoned setting as opposed to a commercial setting. And then we also look at, if there's opportunities for an application from the zoning department. If it's not zoned for that, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that there's a separate process that's in place that may require a minor variance or a bylaw amendment. So definitely we'll work with you and guide you through those processes and link in with our other departments to ensure that you have the most updated information. But we do like to work with you even before securing a lease, just to kind of make sure that the property in question is zoned, so there's no pieces that are identified later that may cause a slight delay in the opening. When we look at mobile licensing, refreshment vehicles, we were looking at trailers, carts, and vehicles that are mounted with a food premise or other itinerant food premises, which are capable of being readily moved and prepared and offered for sale to the public. So, as I mentioned before, we have food trucks, food trailers, food carts, food stands, bicycles that all offer an array of different types of food. And those permissions of the types of food are regulated through our public health department, that is. And there's a list of requirements, with respect to that. When we look at our food trucks, essentially there's greater flexibility sometimes with menu selections, as it's basically a mobile kitchen on wheels. And so that's what we look at with refreshment vending.
So specific days, sales and special events. So yeah, so this is a little tricky one. So basically, if you're a food vendor and you're attending a special event, you are required to fill out the special events form from us, as well as the Kingston Public Health. There's the link there where they can fill that out as well. Food vendors are required to have a license and be registered. So if they're already licensed through your Keys program at POH, they can attend any specific day's events or anything like that, and they don't require an extra license. It would be through the actual organizer that would complete the list of vendors, and that's including if they wanted to do an outside market outside of the different markets, like the public market and the Memorial Center market. Those are a different, they fall under a different, like under a different part of the bylaw there. So if they wanted to do something like that, we need a list of all the vendors and what they're selling, their contact information. We just look it over to make sure they're all completely licensed. If not, then we go through the special events form for the Kingston Public Health. They fill that out. And then if they are a food truck or anything like that, obviously we have to have our inspections from fire, and then they can get a license from there. We do have the one-time fee, or if they plan on being at more events, we do have a yearly fee as well too, or I think we have up to a 6-month fee, right, too. So that we have different fees that we can work with them as well too. But like I said, if they've already have a license through you guys, they can attend events. They just have to make sure that they are allowed to be there and make sure that they are on the list and can go from there. Other than that, the event organizer is required to, like I said, to have a license, and they're responsible for making sure that everybody's went through the health unit and has done it properly. And other than that, we go ahead and issue a license if it's no problem at all. You're muted, Heather.
Yes, sorry guys, I'm not navigating between two screens. So I wanted to go through a quick overview of the types of food-based businesses that are specifically exempt in our bylaw. And those are specifically named as wholesale and selling products at the two markets, which are the ones at Springer Market Square and the Memorial Center Farmers Market. So wholesale food production, there's a couple of definitions there, but basically wholesale food production is where you are making and producing food and selling it to some place like a store or a bakery who sells that product. So it's not direct to consumer sale. It's selling to a vendor such as a restaurant, a grocery store, a farmer's market, or other distribution outlet for their sales. And typically those places would have the license to sell the food. So that's what wholesale looks like. And of course, happy to answer any questions if there are any on those. So if it's an exemption from the bylaw in the category of wholesale, that means that you cannot serve food directly to customer for consumption.
Oh, and so when we look at market vendors, as Heather alluded to, we have two markets currently that are recognized, one being Springer Market Square, which is right behind City Hall, and the other one being at the Memorial Center's Farmers Market over at 303 York Street. And those two markets kind of fall under a different legislation. There's sometimes a public health requirement still, but the food premise licensing and so forth, applicability doesn't apply, or it's exempt from the bylaw, I should say. So when we're looking at that, there can be seasonal vendors that offer their own agricultural products, food. We have artisans and crafters that are also there to provide their food and products to the community. Usually these farmers markets are approximately 51% or more of the vendors are operating stalls that are producers of farm products. And so you will have some other people that may fall outside of that categorization, but the threshold is 51%. And that's with their two markets being Springer Market Square and Memorial Centers Market. So when we look at the application process, we're looking at, starting with the client. So that could be in person at the counter here at 1211 Junction Boulevard, our licensing office. It could be by email, over the phone. And we have a new online system as well. So the person will start with the licensing agent, and that agent will filter out, what exactly is, our clients wanting to do. And in this particular case, it's a food service premise, putting them in the right pathway. So that includes, receiving an application and circulating that information to our stakeholders, which include planning, building, fire, and health. And that's on the screen here currently. So the application package, we're looking at, when we receive an application, we have our business application. So it's a City of Kingston business application that's presented to us. We just recently went online to a jot form system. So you can, I'll provide that information in a few more slides here, but you can either utilize the jot online system, come in person, do it by hand or by email. We ask for your business name registration information, which can be obtained through Service Ontario. It used to be identified as a master business license. That's if you're operating as a sole proprietor or in partnership. If you're operating as an incorporated entity, definitely you can provide us with your incorporated papers as well. In addition to that, we ask for the proof of the right to occupy, which is essentially like a lease agreement or a commitment of permission from the property owner and the tenant, showing that there's an agreement in place to rent said space. When we're looking at floor plans, we do ask that you provide detailed plans. They can be hand-drawn or they can be done by a designer. In most cases, hand-drawn is quite a bit more feasible, of course. So we do ask, the area of the business. So in this particular case, the kitchen. Is there any seating? Also, where's the food being stored and prepared? And we want to ask for home occupations more specifically, the total square footage and the dimensions of each floor as well. And then, of course, a copy of your proposed menu. And if there's a building permit that you've applied for in advance of the business application, so we just can tie that in with our building department. So applying online, this is a new feature for our team in the last few months. So I'm just getting myself immersed to it too, as I'm just sliding back in this position. But there's a link that's provided online here that you'll be able to take today. And you just click on the link and you can select apply now. It'll ask you to create a profile with your name and information. And then from there, once you've solidified your account, you can apply for your business through your business type. And then you would then select food service premise, if that's what you're wanting to apply for example, or refreshment vehicle. And then fill the information accordingly with the fields, name, information, and business content. And there's also an opportunity to provide the attached documents that I referenced before. And our review period is usually around 20 business days. The caveat to that is that if there is some permit requirements or some deficiencies that are noted during inspections, that doesn't guarantee that a license may be issued within that 20-day period. But we aim to look at those particular pieces within that time frame. So my recommendation is to plan in advance if you can, and provide the information to the municipality as soon as you are able to secure a few items, and then we can work together from that point onward. Municipal regulations. So the city has various bylaws that oversee different elements of a business. So we have our zoning compliance, building permits, and then fire code requirements. When we look at our zoning bylaw 2022-62, again, they recognize various properties as either commercial properties that are zoned for a food premise, or conversely, they recognize residential properties that may be conducive for home occupations. This can all be found in the zoning bylaw. Our applications are vetted through the planning department to confirm that the subject land is a permitted use for your type of business. Again, when you're looking at commercial properties, it's advantageous to connect and make sure that before signing a lease that property is zoned for the appropriate use, as opposed to finding it after the fact because there may be some additional requirements. Building permits. So the Ontario Building Code is the legislation in which our building officials oversee. So they take a look at various types of building permits, especially when it's a new build, and also if it's a change of use. So we have applicants sometimes that want to utilize maybe a property that used to be, let's say, a hair salon, but they want to change that into a restaurant. Well, there's usually permits that are required because the intent of the original business wasn't a food premise, it was a hair salon. So we trigger in our building department to assist with those pieces. They will provide you with the process for the appropriate building permits and work with your contractor if you have a contractor in place for that. Again, a building permit isn't always required for a food service license, so it's not necessarily synonymous, but there are times when it is triggered in. Our Kingston Fire and Rescue Department. So again, we talked about why we regulate, for health and safety. They ensure under the Ontario Fire Code and under the National Fire Protection Act that certain requirements are being met. So they look at, smoke alarms, fire extinguishers, hood suppression systems, for example. So those are some of the key areas that they focus on and ensure that those fire protection mechanisms are being maintained and that they're up to date. So when we look at other regulations, both regional, provincial, and also federal, we have our Friends of Public Health. And they play a key role in food service premises, refreshment vehicles, special events. They have their own, they have their set of standards under the Health Protection and Promotion Act, and they have their also forms that need to be filled out for notice of intent to open up a food premise or notice of intent to provide food at a special event, for example. There's also requirements for food handling, training certifications to ensure that clients are meeting that standard. Other potential approvals and permits may include the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. If you decide you're interested in maybe providing some type of beverage, like a glass, or sorry, some wine, let's say, with your meal, they will be linked into that to their own process in order for you to sell in accordance to their regulations. We also have Health Canada, who looks at different elements for storage and the types of potential foods, and then lastly, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, that are another body that sometimes can be pulled into these reviews as well. Okay, so when we issue the license, essentially, what does that mean? It means that you've passed all your inspections. So we've received the reports from public health, fire and rescue, possibly building and zone and planning, and you've met compliance. You've achieved all the standards that are in place. Food service premises is unique with our licensing bylaw, whereby the licensing fee is associated with the health risk classification. So public health determines what that classification looks like, whether it be low, medium, or high. And in addition to that, if there's an occupant load, and so that's basically the amount of seating that would be potentially in your restaurant, for example. And so we have a scale of 0 to 99 seats and then 100 seats and above. So our fees are relative to those classification types, those attributes. The license shall be issued once we receive the license fee, and then that gives you the stamp of approval from the municipality to open your doors to the public. Payment options for the licensing fee include in person, over the phone, by major credit card, or by mail as well. And lastly, I just want to say, so how we can help, you can contact us through email at licensingapplications@cityofkingston.ca, or you can give us a shout at 613-546-4291-3150. And we'd be more than happy to outline the requirements and explain the process to the best of our ability within the licensing realm. And then definitely, have you connect with some of our outside agencies that also help this process. We did have some frequently asked questions too that we wanted to bring up with you today. So I think the first question is, how long does it take to get a business license? So as I mentioned, there's a 20 business day review period. If there's, if everything runs smoothly, then we can issue it within that time frame. If there are permit requirements or some items that need to be corrected through the inspection process, then that 20 business day may take slightly longer. So that's how that timeline works. How long is the license valid for? So it's valid from the date of issuance until the end of our licensing year. The licensing year is December 31st of each year currently. So we do have it, if you apply after July 1st, within that year, then we can prorate the license fee by 25% based on our bylaw. But it goes until the end of December of each year. In addition to that, you will then be part of our renewal program, and we'll provide you with further instructions on how to renew, usually in November. And it's not the same process, it's very seamless. Can I transfer my license if I move locations? Under our bylaw, you can't, because the license is not only tied to the operator, but it's tied to the location as well. So you would have to apply for a new license if you decide to transition from, unit 1 to unit 2, for example. If I sell my business, does my license transfer to a new owner? Unfortunately, it doesn't. So the liability is currently on yourself. And then if you decide to sell your business and someone else wants to come in and purchase your business, then they would be responsible to obtain their license. In addition to that, your responsibility would be to close your licensing account with the municipality if you decide to close your business. What happens if I operate my business without a license? Well, that's why we're here today. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and we can have everyone in compliance and work together as a team. If you operate without a license, then there are fines and charges that are associated with such. And Carissa, I'm not too sure if there's some additional questions, perhaps from the audience today that we can help support.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions here. So I think this one has been answered, but maybe you could just review this answer for us. So we have a number of participants who will join us in the kitchen, but then at some point the goal is to open a location, to open a restaurant of their own. And I know that you mentioned this, but let's just go over it again. If someone is considering doing this, they're out shopping for real estate, trying to find the perfect storefront, but let's say they have no license to operate yet, and so they need to reach out to you to maybe they're transitioning from a different kind of license, maybe they're closing their existing license, they need to open a new one for this new, more specific venture. Should they reach out to you before they have the lease, before they sign for this particular property, wherever it is that they see, or should they do all of those pieces first and then reach out to you?
Well, I think it's a good question. And I think that when you're scouting out for for a potential location, or if you have a certain location in mind, that is, I think that, from my experience, at least, I think it's advantageous for the person to connect with the municipality. And we can work with their folks in planning, that is, to see, okay, can you confirm that 123 Main Street, for example, is a permitted use for a food service operation, for example? And I think that, so I think we would start there, quite honestly, and then once if the answer is yes, then we can start working through the process after they've secured the lease. right? What we've seen sometimes is that, unfortunately, and I'm not certain it's a realtor thing necessarily, but there is maybe an impression or an understanding that perhaps a property might be being promoted or promoted as like maybe like a potential food service operation, but then it turns out that it's actually not. And so I don't know if that's, it's why that's happening necessarily. But I think, for our due diligence, it's like I would recommend the person to come to the municipality if they've narrowed in on one or two locations and say, can you confirm that this location meets the requirements under the zoning bylaw?
Before
Okay.
getting the lease.
Yeah,
And then,
that's
if it's good, then go ahead and secure your lease, but we wouldn't recommend you securing a lease just in case. And saying you want to open in a month, but then it's a whole different, it could be a change of use, could be a whole bunch of different things. So we would like you to start with us. We'll go with planning, like Kevin said, and then we'll continue forward there and you can get your lease then, but we wouldn't recommend getting a lease first, just in case.
okay. That's a really great answer. Thank you very much. I think a lot of times when people are just getting started, they've never done anything like this before. There's a mix of kind of information that comes to you from different places. Maybe you've seen things on TV, different shows even, where you think, oh, this must be how it goes. And so you kind of start to follow this process. Building and growing a business is hugely challenging. And there are tons of experts who want to give you advice and help you with things. So it's really helpful to know that licensing isn't a scary part of the process. It's just an essential part of the process. And that instead of waiting until you have all of the information that you think you need and then coming to licensing, it's a good idea even to reach out and say, hey, I'm just getting started and I have a question. Can you give me the information that I need? Or, what should I do next? So that way people aren't, making a decision or signing something even, and then finding out later that maybe they should have waited. So yeah, thank you very much for that. I have a question about vending machines. So if someone were to, um, want to install some vending machines at, I don't know, a location in Kingston selling sandwiches, similar to what you might see in like a hospital setting, is the process the same? Do they need, how does that work if they have 6 different vending machines in 6 different locations around the city, all selling sandwiches from the same place? What would that look like?
Heather, do you want to talk about this one or would you like me?
Kevin, you go for it. And that's a great question, Carissa, but Kevin, you go for it.
It's
Yeah, I
okay if
mean,
we don't have a perfect answer also. I
no,
think we're just kind of looking for
yeah.
what direction to take.
So if we're looking at, I mean, if you're looking at like a vending machine, where you put some money into it and then it drops a chocolate bar, let's say, for example, or something of that nature. We haven't actually really dipped into vending machines specifically. So right now we're not actually regulating those types of or that type of delivery that is. Now, in saying that though, I mean, it doesn't absolve the person from having to adhere to any public health requirements, right? So there are certain things sometimes that either the bylaw exempts or doesn't necessarily address specifically, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other applicable legislation in place, right? So,
And I just
Okay.
would add to that too, if someone's preparing sandwiches for sale and they're selling it at a different location, it might not necessarily mean a vending machine, but that person where they're preparing that food, that's where the license would tie. So if they're preparing that food in their home kitchen and they're selling it elsewhere, the license would still be required for that food to be prepared in that kitchen. And so it would require the inspection and all of those other regulations and considerations that Kevin was addressing earlier in the presentation. So it's something to consider, maybe just a little bit outside of the answer of the vending machine, but just as a consideration for this moment.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So it also sounds to me like if you're not 100% sure, to contact licensing and ask that question and get the answers that you're looking for. Or maybe you're trying to do something brand new that no one's ever done before, in which case they could work with you directly to sort of figure out what are the next steps and what does need to happen.
Absolutely, and that actually crosses our desk several times, especially lately. Lots of people have really unique ideas and they have the entrepreneurial spirit. And oftentimes we just try to get from folks their business plan and what that looks like in really great detail, because the more detail people can provide us, the better response that we have, and kind of understand where that might or might not dock into the regulations and the business bylaws. So if people are really thinking about what they want to do, they can come to us early. And I think the common theme in this conversation right now is get to us early rather than late is our preference. But yeah, if folks have some ideas of what they might want to do, we just ask that they come with a little bit more detail so that we can really navigate that process and specific to what they're trying to think about doing.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I have another question about, I don't know if it's maybe sort of similar to the vending situation, and that is, if I produce a product, could be anything. Let's stick with sandwiches in the kitchen at Harbour Community Kitchen, and I'm licensed and I'm insured and I have all of my ducks in a row, and I agree to provide my product to another vendor who's in the City of Kingston. So maybe this is a two-part question. The first question is, one, what should I be checking for with that vendor? Do I need to make sure that that vendor has a license and that that vendor is okay to be selling my product? Or does that end up being on them once we transfer my products? Does that make sense? So if I'm producing, I'm legitimate, but I want, I've made a connection with someone else in Kingston who's also selling food. What happens to me? Like is it sort of when I hand that product over to them, when I deliver it to them, now am I no longer responsible for my product? What if it's not stored correctly and those kinds of things? And I do think that this is also probably a public health question. But sort of from your perspective, how do you see that? Or is that connected at all to the business licensing piece?
The only thing I can really think of is if you're unsure about that business, maybe ask them if they have a current business license with us.
Yep.
And then if they do, then if you feel comfortable, absolutely. But other than that, those questions would definitely be for public health for sure. And if they don't have a license, obviously, please feel free to reach out to us so we can, follow up with the client there. So.
Okay, so I think this is a great point, Jessica, that if you are operating and you are hoping to operate, to build some partnerships in the community, that a good idea might be, in advance of getting started, is to decide for yourself, what are my expectations of the vendor who's going to be carrying my products, and what do I want them to have in place in order to be able to carry my products? And then, if someone doesn't have one of those items, that maybe you say, I'm sorry, not at this time. But once you get A, B, and C, I'd love to talk to you.
Absolutely. Again. Just because it makes you feel more comfortable that your product's being sold properly and inspected properly through this other group that you're willing to partner with or whatever. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with, for sure. But like I said, ask the health unit for that one for sure.
Okay.
I would address to see if they are licensed through us first.
That's great. Thank you. And for everyone who's watching us, we are going to be meeting with public health as our next educational workshop. So I'm gonna hang on to these questions, and I'm gonna ask these questions of public health as well. So we'll get the full rounded answer from everybody. But I think the theme really is, if you're not sure, just ask. And so
Absolutely.
For those from our program, that could be asking me, never hesitate to approach me. And also, licensing, they're here today to help you. Their goal is not to shut you down, but to help support you and to make sure that your business is safe for you and for the greater community. So, this is this is not a scary, this is not a
Yeah.
scary group of people. This is a group of people who are, you know, they're invested in your success. So please reach out to them. You know, if you have questions, if you're not sure, you can talk to me about it, and we'll figure out, you know, what the next steps should be. Okay, I've got questions in a couple spots, so just bear with me so I don't miss any here. Oh, I think we did have a question about the risk rating that was about, you know, why does my license cost X number of dollars and a friend of mine costs X number of dollars, and this was covered in the presentation. So you have a low, medium, and high risk business, and this is determined by public health. So when public health comes in and does your inspection, they're going to give you a rating. We can talk about, you know, the specifics of that at another time, but when you apply for the license with the City of Kingston, they're going to have your inspection information. So they're going to see that you are a low, medium, or high risk business, and that's what the way that public health has determined you. And so the cost of your business license will be impacted by that. So it's not anything that you're doing. It's not that you're, we're more worried about you than someone else. These are things like, maybe someone's serving meat versus someone who's serving, vegetables only, or something like this. So you can speak to me about that directly if you have questions, further questions. Okay, so there is a wholesale question. So, if I'm selling wholesale, but then I decide to, sell locally in Kingston, to have my own shop, do I need to, I think that this question has been answered, but do I then need to apply for a license to be able to sell to a consumer here in Kingston?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So if they're exclusively wholesale, which isn't typically the case, I mean, that's usually quite unique. If someone's making, for example, small batch jam, and that jam goes to a grocery store, and that grocery store sells the jam, that's a different story. But I think for most cases, folks want to be a bit more flexible with their business and be able to do direct to consumer sales. So maybe it's a foresight consideration when you're doing that business planning is thinking about, I might be doing wholesale in this moment, but would I ever want to sell directly to customers? And if that answer is yes, then it's probably worth coming to us and getting that license. But if the business does pivot, then of course that would trigger the license requirement.
So there's a spin-off question then from me, which is, if you were launching a wholesale business, well, I'm freezing up here, so I'm just going to repeat this question to make sure that everyone gets it. So if you were launching a wholesale business and you don't really think that you're going to be selling locally, but there's a possibility, maybe as you're getting set up for wholesale, there are other businesses in Kingston who are reaching out to you to say, hey, we're interested in selling your product. And you start to maybe wonder if wholesale isn't the only way to go. Does it make more sense to just come and apply for the license from the start? Or should someone wait until until someone approaches them, or until, I think, I'm not sure if that's really a complete question, but it does take 20 days to start that, to get through that process. So like my feeling would be, if you think that you're possibly going to go down that path, that it would be well worth it to get started, or at least to explore that process with licensing, so that you can find out, is this going to be relatively simple for me, or will there be some hoops that I need to jump through once I'm ready to make that transition? So
yeah, and I think it's going to be very individual when people are thinking about that business. And so it's hard to kind of respond in a broad sense when there's so many different types of businesses and types of products and types of But I think, and we might be biased as a licensing team, but I think we would agree that it's probably best. And as Jess was talking about earlier, if you're interested in taking your product and you're invited to a food market that's outside of these farmers markets, or you're invited to a special event, you know, you could move a little bit more nimbly having that license and carrying that license to be able to attend this event as a licensed vendor. So I think for folks, of course, we would strongly consider folks to come to us for a business license if there's even a remote possibility of attending events and promoting your product and selling directly to consumer in any way.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
At the end of the day, it just offers, you know, the entrepreneur greater flexibility, right? So if they want to, you know, kind of weave through different types of ways they want to market and sell their product, you know, it just gives them that greater flexibility as opposed to strictly doing wholesale only, exclusively, right? So.
Okay, that's great. So for example, like even if you're selling wholesale, but you wanted to sell periodically maybe to the general public, then just going ahead and getting this license and you know having it is just going to make you, you know, as you said, Heather, more nimble and just ability to move very quickly, which we also know in this business, it's the ability to kind of pivot and move according to what the market is asking for. That's really going to you know, help you grow that business. Mhm. Okay, so I have one final question, but before I ask that, do you folks have any additional information? Did you know, your brain sort of went, oh yeah, we should mention this, or do you have any sort of closing thoughts for us, I guess?
Just based on the questions that you submitted earlier, Chris, so there was a question earlier about enforcement, and several questions that kind of hit the theme of what happens if I don't have a license. And Kevin mentioned, you know, there are mechanisms to for enforcement. There's fines and charges that could be applied. Of course, we want to come in and help people understand the licensing process. We take an education first approach. We will explain the process to folks who might not understand that this is a requirement, and we'll take that approach. So that's where we start from. But of course, there are ways that if people aren't being compliant with the bylaw, that we can take it to the enforcement level. And I know there's a lot of questions about, you know, I know my neighbor sells pies on their Facebook account. And I just wanted to quickly address that we do our best to get our message out to the community about these licensing requirements. But it's extremely challenging for anyone with an oven and a social media account can sell their pies. And naturally, like we can take those complaints, and we do take them seriously. But it's very difficult to monitor that, especially in the world of social media with so much opportunity to advertise online. But we do want to say that, you know, the risk is on that person to do that without a license. So we do very much encourage, even if you might know someone who isn't licensed in doing that, we very much encourage to follow the proper path and be compliant with the bylaw, regardless of those situations.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like, you know, just get the license, make sure that you're licensed, and that's going to save you a lot of headaches in the future, no matter what. So the city knows about you, they know what you're doing, they understand a bit about your operations, and it really is a way to protect you and to protect your business, which is, you know, and will become, as you build and grow, an asset to you and your family. So this is just another way, like insurance, for example, that you know, that we protect ourselves and what we've built. Mhm. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Um, Actually, I have one quick question before I go ahead to the final question, which is sometimes, you know, I think all of us do this. You wander away from a presentation or a lecture or whatever it is, and you think, oh, I really should have asked that question. So if someone has a follow-up question from our presentation, what should they do with their question?
I think, Chris, they can send it to the email that's been provided actually in the presentation. And be more than happy, one of us be more than happy to address that question. So I think everyone's gonna have a copy of this. So if they just want to email licensing applications at cityofkingston.ca, we'd be more than happy to take a look at those questions.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So my final question is specific to Harbour Community Kitchen. So when you join Harbour Community Kitchen, currently it's me, I will be helping you to go through all the processes and make sure that you know what needs to happen. But when we look at at our licensing for the Harbour, what should someone do if they are being asked to prove that they are licensed in the City of Kingston, if they're falling underneath our license? Can they just use a copy of the license we have, or what do they need to be able to do that?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the Harbour Community Kitchen is the first and only of its kind with this type of licensing. So if we're running into situations where folks are requiring the license from the community kitchen and the license isn't specific enough for the person requesting it, Carissa, we're happy to provide what's required. If it's a letter or if it's some sort of agreement or some sort of, I know Carissa, you and I are developing a procedural document. If there's something that we can help build so that folks can communicate that they're under this licensing program or community project, and that's legitimate, then we're happy to do that. I know that's kind of a non-answer for right now, but again, these are all things that we're working on developing, and really great questions and great considerations as we think about these things. So happy to support in whatever way we can. And the more we understand from people of what they need, the better we can respond to that. So I guess my answer for now is whatever it takes and whatever you need, then we can look to find the best way to provide that.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So I would also say, from my perspective, if that's happening, if you are applying to, I don't know what it would be, and someone wants that information, just to come to me and chat with me about it, and we'll connect with licensing, and we'll figure out what it is that's needed to sort of remove that barrier for you so that you can move forward. And some of those things look different for different businesses, and so we'll take that approach, and we're also building and growing alongside you, and part of the process is not necessarily knowing the answers to all of the questions, but knowing where it is that you should go to find those answers. And so we'll just we'll work together, and we'll figure it out, and we'll move forward. So that is everything for me. That's all of our questions. You folks have been so wonderful. We really appreciate your expertise, your guidance, your knowledge, your time, the presentation that you've shared with us. We also will have a PDF copy, so that will be available for viewing. And won't be in the immediate future, but we would love to have you back, at another point to kind of review all of this again, or see what's changed and that kind of thing. And I just, from Harbour Community Kitchen, from Keys Employment and Newcomer Services, and from myself, really want to say thank you very, very much for your help. And this presentation will be provided to a number of people, and will help support them as they get started. So thank you very, very much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
I just wanted to thank you too, Carissa, and the great job you've been doing with this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carissa, for having us today, and look forward to providing some support for some of your clients and participants that are in the program.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thanks for helping put a face to scary licensing and enforcement. We really appreciate that, and and all of your help so far. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.